Hello, everyone. I've got a gorgeous guest with me. Her name is Syama Bunten, and she's seriously so gorgeous. And I'm so excited that we have this chance to talk today because she is also a friend. And let me just tell you, she has a podcast called Getting Rich Together. So already you know what this conversation is going to be about. So she is so lovely and so committed to helping women build wealth. And because if we build wealth and have all that, then we can actually change the world. So we are going to dig into so much today. So get ready. But before I officially launch into this discussion, a little bit of background on this badass I have on the podcast today. She's the principal of Big Delta Capital, and like I said, the host of Getting Rich Together. And she believes that women hold the key to unlocking this next wave of innovation through capital. And we're going to get into it. I've heard it from other guests on the show that there's this big wealth transfer happening. And actually, Syama, I have like two financial advisor clients who keep talking about this wealth transfer that's going to be happening. So we're going to be digging into that. But Syama's business expertise has been recognized by major publications like the New York Times and Forbes, little pubs you might have heard about. And she has received numerous accolades, including the Positive Leadership Award and Thought Leadership Award for female entrepreneurs. She's a sought-after speaker at events like South by Southwest and TED, and she shares her insights on wealth creation, entrepreneurship, and financial literacy. So yeah, we're going to get into it with Syama today. And as all of you know, if you've been listening to the show for a long time, I don't really talk a lot in depth about money. And I'm changing that because I was looking at all the guests I've had and everything we've been talking about. And we can talk about all the things, but if we're not talking about money, we're not going to achieve the goals we want to achieve, and we're not going to have that independence, and we're not going to truly be empowered like I want you all to be empowered. So Syama, welcome. I cannot wait to dig into all the money things with you today.
Thank you, Jen. I'm so excited to be here.
Woo, we're going to really get into it. We had to like cut ourselves off because we hadn't seen each other for a while. And we're like, oh, wait, whoa. We got to start pressing record because we just launched into it. So we're going to just launch right in. So Syama, before we kind of go into the meat, just give everybody a little bit of overview of how you got to where you are, because you are a dynamic, fabulous female entrepreneur. And so this is, so many entrepreneurs listen to the show, so many women in midlife listen to the show. So my goal with this podcast is to also have just general inspiration for women who are wanting to make changes, sitting on the sidelines, wondering if they can do the thing. So I love hearing everybody's stories so we can get everybody jazzed up to know that they can do the thing.
So Jen, I've been doing the thing, well, really for as long as I can remember. When I was little, I petitioned the White House so that I could sing at the White House and got to do so with my choir by the age of 13. 2012, coming off of a incredible career in fashion. I was at Gucci, I was at Barney's, started my business, took a big leap of faith, launched scaling retail. And then I took another big leap of faith. And I think that was actually about, gosh, it'd be 5 or 6 years ago when I filed for divorce and decided that I was going to take a leap of faith on myself. And I said, something doesn't feel right. I need my life to be better, more fulfilled. I need to get myself on track. What is my true calling? What is my purpose? And so my divorce was a huge, big leap of faith, saying, you know what? I believe in my future more than I believe in my present. And with that sort of came this entire unlock of all the things in my life that I hadn't actually looked at before. One of them was money. A big component of that was, how do I make money? What do I do with it? Like, what happens with it? How do I even think about growing it? I mean, these were some of the things that were so future to me that I actually hadn't really thought about it in the present. And that is when I launched Big Delta Capital, which is sort of the organization that I do a lot of my investing underneath. And then also more recently, launching Getting Rich Together in order to really help women connect to the stories of successful women so that they know that they can do it too. That building wealth is not something that's exclusive. We can all build it in our own way. You're not behind, you're not ahead. We can all do this by sharing information together. So lots of big leaps of faith. Another big leap of faith was getting married again 2 years ago to the love of my life. So I'll tell you what, Jen, I am a woman who follows my heart. I take the leap. And luckily for me, the universe keeps catching me.
Oh, I love it. And what you neglected to mention is you got married, but you also inherited, or is that the right term? Or you've got three little boys now too. So you not only got, you got a husband, but you got three little kids.
We sometimes laugh that I got a family for Christmas. It was one of those things where I knew that I wanted to be a mother. I knew that I wanted to have a family. And I really surrendered to the fact that I just didn't know how it was going to happen. And this idea of I'm not going to force this, I'm going to surrender to my own happiness and let the pieces fall. And what's so incredible is I have these three beautiful children, all boys. We love each other so completely. And it was always as if I was meant to be in their life, like in this moment, which is so powerful.
Oh my God, you just got me choked up. You guys are all going to be hearing this too. Everyone knows by now that I just dropped off my son at school, and I am just so open right now and I'm raw. And so any stories about love and this and that, like I just got chills when you said that they were meant to be with you, because there's nothing more beautiful and we're all doing this for love, right? There's nothing more beautiful, more important and powerful than a loving family and having people around you that you want with you and that support you and lift you up. And I'm in all my fields, so you guys trust. I won't digress too much, but I just wanted to make that known, because it's very special. And I love the fact that you said releasing expectations and kind of letting the universe do its thing, and you getting yourself into your place to be able to receive. It's super powerful because you put the time and effort into you. And so that's right off the top, y'all. There's a really important lesson right there. So we've just got to release and just stop white knuckling life, right? And just let go and allow things to happen. And then look at you. Look at
Mhm.
you. It's worked for me, because when we start to grip, then we also constrain, I think, the outcome of what's
Mhm.
even possible. If we're like, it needs to be like this and it needs to happen this way and in this time frame, and that just puts limits on what's actually available to us, right?
And that's where all the magic is. The magic is beyond that which we know. That which we know brought us to where we are. But honestly, like it was that we didn't even know we could be here is what allowed us to really be here. It's easy to sort of string along the dots when you look backwards. Oh, this happened, that happened. But did you ever know that was actually going to happen at that time? That was going to lead you to that thing. So the faith in the unknown, I think, is truly what propels us to sort of these next levels of greatness.
You're just reminding me with this eloquent thought that you just had, that didn't you guys just come off a Joe Dispenza like 5 day a 5 day situation?
Okay, so Jen, we spent
I need the
seven
clip notes.
days
Yeah.
at this retreat. We meditated for 35 hours. The longest meditation was 5 hours long. It was extremely powerful, life-changing, and something that I will now commit to doing every year. It
Wow.
was, yeah, it was really powerful. And I think from a meditation and science standpoint, I think Dr. Joe is really sort of leading on the edge of proving scientifically why meditation is so important for the ways in which we actually can create, heal ourselves. And he does it through science. And so I've been a long time meditator since I was about 25, 26. I've done all different kinds of things, transcendental meditation, Vipassana, 10-day silent meditations, like kind of done all these things, but I've never found a meditation that was so active, so engaged, and also so focused on creating the future you want. So these meditations are active, they're exciting, they're pulling you forward into the unknown. And for me, it keeps it engaging. It keeps me from snoring, from being in a meditation for 5 hours. So, but I'll definitely do it again. And I would suggest anyone who's ever been like, maybe that's for me. It's for you. If you've had a then it's for you.
I mean, we could talk about that, only that, for an hour, but I wanted to bring that up because I've seen a lot of people do those types of retreats. And then the other one is, I'm a big Abraham Hicks fan too. And there's those types of things. Like, I need to start adding that in.
I just came off of an Abraham Hicks cruise to Alaska just a couple months ago. And I got to tell you, that cruise was amazing. I mean, now I'm like, how do I couple the Abraham Hicks cruises with the Joe Dispenza retreats, because the Joe Dispenza retreats, they start at 6 in the morning and sometimes they end around like 8 or 9 p.m. The Abraham Hicks is like a lot more relaxing and a lot more spa-like. And I really enjoyed that because it's like, oh, you're in session from 10 to 1, and then the rest of the day you can kind of goof off and have a good time.
And just for those of you who might not know, I mean, I love Abraham Hicks, and I think the book's on here. It's actually, I'm pointing, if you're watching on YouTube, it's on my bed or my desk. And it's been dog-eared and highlighted, and it's the book I refer to every now and again. I just open it up, and whatever page kind of opens up, it's Ask It and Is Given. And I give it as client gifts. If people aren't indoctrinated into the world, because it was hugely transformative for me. It's the whole thing we're talking about, is looking for this future and visualizing what you want, and you get it. Again, we could go on a whole tangent about it, but let's dive in. I want to ask you the $1 million question, and it's about money stories. So before we get into like building wealth and how we're going to do this together, we all have a money story. I know I got mine, and I see sometimes I'm repeating things that happened in my own family growing up. And so how important is the money story in our lives right now with money? And how do you see it play out with all the people that you work with and that you see, and yourself too? Because I know you talk publicly about your money story. Like, and can we shake it? And can we change it? Can we change our money story?
I think one of the most important moments in life is the ability to look over your shoulder and see the person who you once were, and to be able to look at her and see her and look at where you are today and say, you know what, that's change. And I think that that's really powerful when it comes to anything, but especially when it comes to money. When I was growing up, I was the financial aid kid going to all of these like really prestigious, expensive schools. There was a huge money story there, being someone who would go home to a 1-bedroom apartment when everyone was going home to these big houses and, sort of having these different experiences. And as a young child, you don't really understand or know what's going on. And so they say, depending on who you listen to, that so much of these identities of what we pick up of ourselves really come at such a very young age. So by the age of like 6 years old, I knew that things were different. I didn't know why or what it meant, but automatically, I had these stories in my mind. And they translated as I got older. Money was tight for my parents. And so I would hear all this fighting around the cost of my education. And so another big thing came into my mind, which was education is the most important thing that I can do for myself, and it is worth anything that I need to put at it. And so I also learned that, okay, like my mom was fighting for my education. My dad's like going along with it, but my mom was really spearheading this. And so again, all these little stories that start to come in over time. And what's really fascinating about that is this idea of not having the things that I wanted in the world really propelled me to having all the things that I want in the world. And it's not necessarily through sheer grit and force, which is what I did most of my life. Now things are happening faster and more abundantly from a place of a lot more ease and a lot more allowing. But in the beginning stages, my money stories were, there's not enough of it, so scarcity. I'm going to have to be aggressive and be like a man in the workplace. So taking on, qualities that were not like me in order to have this thing. And it was very much around grasping. And so I had to really unlearn much of this. And it came up for me again during my divorce. I had to unlearn so much of my own sense of worthiness, because all of that was basically saying to myself my whole life, you're not worthy of an easy life. You're not worthy of having the things you want. You're not worthy, so you need to fight. Because if you're worthy, you receive. If you don't think you're worthy, well, then you're going to fight hard. You're going to prove yourself, and you're going to make sure other people see and recognize so that you have it. So it's the gap that makes us need to chase the thing. It's the worthiness that allows us to lean back and receive it.
Ooh, Syama, that was deep. And I feel so much of that story of my own, of like to work and to earn is to struggle and despair. there was a lot of the work that I had to do to unpack that. And my listeners have heard this a ton, like of my own burnout of, because it impacts, I'm sure you see this a lot too, it impacts your boundaries, it impacts like we over service, it impacts our ability to say no because we're going, doing, and because that's what I saw in my family growing up. It was just to work and to do this and to exist in the world is to struggle and to suffer and to have the ease and flow like wasn't a part of it. There was always and it's so funny because it's so baked in and you're just making me think of a lot of stuff. And, we grew up like, I guess, solidly middle class. You grew up in Hawaii. It was very expensive. There were 4 kids and we all went to private school. And my parents like stitched it together to pay for it. But kind of similar to you, we didn't have a lot of, we didn't go on ski vacations and all this other kind of whatever. I grew up in Hawaii. So like no one's going to cry me a river. Like I had a great life, but I always knew that everything was tight. There was 4 of us, private school and going off to college, living in Hawaii and all of that. And so you take that with you. And I know it's something I actively fight against with all the work I've done on myself because I burned myself out with the first company that I had, striving, driving, over servicing, having kids, trying to do it all. And you end up in a pile in flames. And so I'm loving that this is where this conversation is going because I know so many women can relate to this as well as, and I want to go into the worthiness. And what was it that you said about the worthiness versus, oh God, you said something so beautiful. It was to think you're not worthy, then it's a fight. And then if you are worthy, then it's the allowance. Oh my God. That knocks my socks off hearing that. So can we dig into that a little bit?
Totally. I think what's also fascinating, to circle back to like everyone has a story, right? So the person who grows up with everything in the world, extremely wealthy, can have poverty consciousness. And so this idea that like growing up or being in a certain social economic status somehow indicates your future trajectory in life or how you feel about yourself or how other people perceive you is just not true. I've interviewed extremely wealthy women who have what they would deem bag lady syndrome, right? Who they would deem to be fearful of losing all their money when they have so much wealth that anyone else would say, what are you talking about? So this idea of our worthiness, which we've been taught to correlate with money, are actually very separate things. And so I think that that's important to address because no matter what your financial status is in this very moment or where it came from, your levels of worthiness have the ability to change everything for you. It's why they say that, wealth can be plummeted within a generation, right? Because you think about that person who's now responsible for managing those accounts. Well, if they don't feel confident, empowered, and worthy to do that, well, then they're just going to let it go, right? Because they don't feel connected to it. And so this idea of like, who are we and what are we worth? And can we allow ourselves to live in joy? Is it actually okay if I'm happy? Like what does corporate America say if it's okay that I'm happy and feel good and don't need to engage in that system? They don't like that, right? So this idea of worthiness is very much not from a, capitalistic mindset, which is, we are worthy, but everyone else needs to sort of fight, right? So some are worthy and some aren't. This idea of worthiness is very much like a unilateral human concept, which is, what I dream and want in the world might be very different from what you dream and want in the world. And those things do not have to be in conflict, right? Like both of our dreams can exist if we're actually looking at what it is that makes us happy and satisfied and fulfilled. And so that's a big part of sort of how I think about worthiness and money, which is if you and I are not wealthy enough to buy, invest, and do the things that we believe are going to change the world, then how the hell is that going to even happen? Right. So money gets to be this incredible conduit to translate our values and our ability to feel like the world we want to see, that we're deserving of living in the world we want to see.
I love that. You're making me think of, and this is the common thing that I see with my clients, like working through them on their businesses and either baby entrepreneurs or just, gosh, even women who I've known for years. Everyone's got this fear and the worthy, can I do this? Because you're still leveling up. So there's the fear of starting something new. There's the fear of then leveling up. Like I'm speaking, okay, I'm here, but now I'm speaking on a big stage. What do I charge? Everyone, I swear to God, every single woman I talk to has this fear about money and asking for it, ruffling feathers, and talking about it. I mean, so let's start with this question, because I'm just having this like huge reflection right now. I mean, what can we do? Like, how can we support each other in this? Because first of all, no one's talking about it. Like, we're talking about it now, and I'm so appreciative. And I made it a point to start talking about this more publicly, because I think everybody, first of all, thinks everybody has it figured out, and most people don't. I think we all have the same fears. We all have the same, so many of our stories are similar. And of course, then there's also external forces, markets, this, that, and the other that change. Somebody might lose a job. People are like at midlife, people are losing spouses or getting divorced. There's so many things that happen, right? That can sort of shake us up. But in keeping with your getting rich together and this women supporting women and how we can do this together, like how can we do this together? Like what is the first step for all of us to collectively sort of lock arms and like do this together? Because I think I'm just going to say, and I want to hear what you're going to say, like I think it's addressing it and having these forums and talking about it instead of having it be this shameful thing that we're locking in a closet and never talking about, that's causing us stress. We need to seek out the people and situations so we can just kind of demystify and like, let's just get cracking on what we need to do.
We need to start sharing our knowledge. And, it's no surprise that when we need legal advice, we hire an attorney. When we need to fix a health problem, we go to see a doctor. When we need a publicist, we hire PR, we hire a publicist. So you know, we're so used to in a professional setting to go to people who know about things. But if I know that you've done well in real estate, I would be an idiot to be like, hey, I'm actually interested in this. Can you share with me like what you've done or how you think about it? And more often than not, when it comes to asking someone for their insight and their advice and how to think about it, when it comes to this and women, more often than not, women are like, yeah, I'll share what I did. And what are you doing? And then it becomes a matter of exchanging information and areas of domain expertise. And that I think is really valuable, because part of gaining knowledge is saying, I don't know this. That's why we go to school, right? Because we don't know things. And so it's easy to say, like, I'm going to join a group that's going to talk about money. But if you are not willing to reconcile you with you and say, you know what? I thought that life was going to turn out a certain way and it didn't. I thought I was going to have these resources and I don't. I know a lot about this one thing, but not about all these other things. You close the gaps of knowledge by recognizing that there's a gap to close. And so I think the one thing we could all stand to do is to raise our hands and say, hey, I'm curious about this thing. Who do I know who can talk to me about this? Because if you're not asking, right, you're not going to receive, right? Also an Abraham Hicks thing, right? It's like ask and you shall receive. So, but you have to be able to identify the things that you want to know, because through my, experience now and looking at so many different ways of creating wealth, not all of them are for me, right? I now know a lot about a lot of different things, but at the end of the day, I'm going to put my money and energy into areas that feel in alignment, right? I'm going to say, you know what? Maybe I don't want to be this real estate mogul. Maybe I actually want to buy and sell businesses, or maybe I actually want to become really good at getting into things like mobile homes and like looking at underserved markets of housing or whatever the thing is, right? Investing in Broadway, which is something I've had so much fun doing. It's like there are so many different ways to do this. And it starts, I think, by self-introspection and then not feeling insecure about saying that you need help. If you cannot say you want to know, you're never going to know.
I think that's really helpful. And I don't think we can hear that advice enough of like asking for help in whatever aspect. And in this case, the money aspect. And we're so generous. Women are so generous with their time and information too. But it is interesting how many women won't ask for the help and won't admit, like, I just don't know this. We can't know everything about everything. Okay. We're all not super, we like to think we're super women, but we don't. And so to your point, like, yeah, you go to the lawyer, you go to this, you go to that. So I'm really glad we're having this conversation. So ask for help. I want you to share the story we were talking about before we started recording about the family group. So you were putting together some type of investment, and it goes to the worthiness, because I think just kind of putting it in reality, just so we can have one more like example, and then I'm going to move on.
Totally. So, I'm
About the
putting
worthiness.
together,
And, yeah, go ahead.
I'm putting together a small group around investing and money and sharing and knowledge. And I recently, posted, and this is for, everyone of all ages, right? My sister's in it. She's under 30. My aunt's in it. She's over 70. Really just to start getting us to talk about money. And so I sent out an update. The group's not starting for a few weeks, and a small group. And I said, hey, I have a couple exciting wins, and there's an opportunity for more follow-on investment if anyone's exciting. And to be honest, those two wins are incredible because they're two exits, right? So you hear about a lot of women talking about investing. You don't hear a lot of women saying, hey, this is actually exiting and there's something actually happening here. Like, that's so exciting. And so it was really unfortunate because one of the women who I invited to the group, felt like, hey, after I sent that, she wrote me, she's like, I don't think this group is going to be right for me. I don't think that, like, I'm going to be able to take advantage or get value out of that. And what's interesting is, like I said, the group is for all financial levels. Doesn't matter what you have. It's about, if you don't know these things, how do you know how to make the right decisions in terms of taking advantage of things? And so it was a really clear sort of gap of worthiness. I don't feel like I'm worthy of learning about this because I don't think I'm worthy of being able to take this sort of, again, confidence, empowerment, right? And then action, right? And so it was really unfortunate for me to feel and experience that, because you have to feel worthy of the knowledge, like, you may not have the resources today to do all these things, but the number of conversations that I've had with people that I'm like, hey, this deal may not be right for me right now, but I want to learn about this because I would like to eventually be able to be in a position to do that. And I want to know what are the things that are even possible for me. Right. So it's this gap of worthiness that was just so evident this morning. And it made me sad, but also opened up my eyes to the fact that, like, you can offer people opportunities, but if they don't feel worthy of receiving the opportunities, then there's really nothing you can do about that.
Yeah. So there's a lot of work we all have to do on ourselves in many realms, but getting back to sort of like what you're doing and how you're helping to educate and empower, because all of you all are going to have to go listen to Syama's podcast, Getting Rich Together. Like you said, you had the impetus of actually, sharing this knowledge and sharing other experts, and the women that you've come across and have on your show. So were you, like, how did it all start? Like, how did you decide that, okay, Getting Rich Together, you have this platform, and I know it goes beyond the podcast. And so just tell us a little bit about that. And then I want to like know what you guys are doing in the future.
Yeah. So, the impetus for the show came from basically hosting community-driven conversations with groups that I'm a part of. And what I realized was that women didn't need strategic advice. We didn't need to cut the lattes. Like the women that I'm in community with are at a different level financially, right? It's like, okay, we have jobs or career, like there's something that's been working. We're a little bit older, there's something that's working, and we actually already know about some of the basics, right? And at that time when I was going through my divorce, I basically knew of 5 ways to make money. It was like, you get a job, you hire yourself and be an entrepreneur. So again, it's another job. You invest in your 401k, you have an opportunity to maybe invest in the stock market, and maybe you buy your house, right? Like there were like the 5 ways that I knew about this. And what I started to realize was that, there were so many more things I needed to learn about that were beyond those 5 ways, right? And so within that was, I don't need strategy on cutting my lattes. I need to actually talk to women like you, Jen, and say, hey, like, how have you actually thought about money during your life? And what were some of the key decision moments? You and I were talking before the show about, oh my God, feeding a family is so expensive. Like it is so expensive. So like, how are we thinking about money? And so I started to realize that those were the conversations. And for me, the expert is a woman who's lived her life understanding her own values when it comes to money. And no one on this earth does not have a relationship to money. And so the show really seeks to highlight the greatness of women. It seeks to highlight the greatness of her own story with money over time. So, what were your money stories growing up? How did that impact you? Let's say college, career, legacy. I mean, it's really this through line, money energetically. Again, it's with us our entire lives. So, that was, community conversations, talking to other women, getting real about, how did you do that? In one conversation with Rebecca Minkoff, she's talking about how she's made so much more money in her real estate investments, and then they were like, wow, like you're a big fashion designer. Like, that's so amazing to hear that you're actually thinking about your wealth in this diversified way and not just as an entrepreneur. So that is really the impetus of the show. And I feel really grateful to really have had the opportunity to speak with so many women about their journeys, because it's really for me. It's really for me to have this opportunity to be like, wow, okay, Shama, you're not ahead, you're not behind, like you are on your path. And all these other women have been experiencing money and thinking about these things. And guess what? Some of the things they've done might be right for you, and some of the things may not, but they're all available.
Oh, I love that. And you just made me think about something too. And this goes to just really tripling down on being open and having these transparent conversations with each other. Because when you said that Rebecca Minkoff made more money in real estate, I've seen a little bit of this pop up, a little things I've read on social media. Like, thankfully, some of these people you think, oh, they're making all their money in XYZ. And then someone might feel like a failure because they're not making that kind of money in XYZ. And you realize they have real estate investments, they bought a building, they owned a car wash, there's all these different revenue streams. And I think that's what we need to talk about more, because usually it's like you're saying, it's usually not just from your 9 to 5 job.
And that's the thing we don't talk about. Like people are looking, just like you said, very 360. I mean, it's like this is so much bigger than most of us realize it is. And it's also so much more accessible than we've been taught. We've been taught it's like go get a job or go work for yourself, right? We actually haven't been taught that, like, oh, our friend buys a lot of real estate. Hey, like, would it even be possible for me to like put a little bit of money in with you and like see what happens? So this idea of like incremental risk is also really important, because by no means should anyone just go put all their money into one thing and like hope, cross your fingers and hope that it works out. It's, hey, how can I start to take some steps into like hedging risk and timing and be able to start exploring? And the most important thing when it comes to growing your wealth is understanding your own risk tolerance. It's like there's nothing worse than like for the first time. And I remember this a couple years ago when you're like, oh, these companies I invested in no longer exist, which means I'm not going to get my money out of that, and or a company does IPO and the market values them less, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, like this didn't go so well. So you have to know what that feels like in order to be able to actually make better decisions. And so I think sometimes we're so afraid with money, and we're so scared of losing it, we're so scared of what it means to not have all the things our friends have. But this idea that if I'm going to learn how to work with money, I'm going to have to be okay with risk, especially if I want to make a lot of it.
Yeah, you're making me think of something. I just heard somebody talk about, obviously startups, that's a whole other thing, but, kind of going after boring type things. And, real estate's usually always a good idea. And it's figuring, like you're saying, figuring out kind of that risk. And, we've been in and out of stuff here and there. And then all of a sudden, like, as we were talking before, I'm like, okay, with 3 kids, like went off to college, a couple more, so now we're looking at, it's everything's on the table. And you also mentioned, things are going to be up and down, like things in your life are going to change. I interviewed a real estate agent locally here, and she said, half the women that come to her are like, I had this life and I'm selling my house because I'm getting divorced and now I'm in a whole new world. So there's so many things that happen, especially in midlife. So I love this idea of, well, seeking out the information, assessing your risk, and then understanding there's more things available to us, because we were not taught that in school. We were just not taught that in school. Was go get a job, and that's your primary source of income. And so I'm hoping with this next generation, I look at my son, he's in finance, he wakes up early to trade, like he had to change a class because he's like, it's going to impact my trading. I'm like, all right, dude, go for it, but you got to like go major in finance and do the thing. But so I'm hoping hopefully this next generation is seeing things differently, because they're seeing kind of the gig economy. They're seeing multiple revenue streams. We grew up very much, my parents, same job. Yeah. And that was kind of it. So I think we're all, in most of that mindset of just, that's kind of how it works.
Totally. I had a friend the other day, a new friend. We had just met for the first time in person, and she said to me, she's like, Syama, I've been sending episodes of your podcast to my daughter who's in college, because I want her to hear these life stories of these women and how accessible they are, and like hear it from someone else, right? Because it's like we can sit here and be like, all right, now don't do this, do this. And it's still very parental, right? But when you start to hear from other women who are more accessible, oh, okay, here are some different ways. It's like there's this freedom in choice with the education.
I love it. So speaking of education, you mentioned before we got on that you are doing a bunch of conferences next year. So what's that going to be all about? So is that like helping to spread the knowledge? So we're taking everything you're kind of doing on the podcast and just taking it live? Like, what's up?
Yeah, so the vision behind the conferences are essentially to help catalyze the next step with financial activity for women. So Getting Rich Together is a part of a much larger organization, Big Delta Capital, which I founded a few years ago. And we're on a mission to help activate 1 million women to be able to take the next step in becoming financially active. Now, financially active can mean I want to invest in the stock market the first time, buy a house. It could also mean I want to invest in private equity. I want to invest in REITs. I mean, it's the next step, whatever the next step is. And so a big part of my mission and what I think is so needed is access to what is available, right? If we want to do better for ourselves, and all of these other organizations and people out there have domain expertise, well, then how can I serve to be the best on ramp to be able to get more women access to what's available, empower them, help them feel confident, and take the next step in becoming financially active? So there will be multiple conferences next year. We're hosting everything under the platform women.win. So super interesting, easy URL. And for your friends who are on YouTube, we've got a lovely little QR code that my producer of the event ended up putting together. So an easy way to sort of access that and sign up. But it's going to be exciting. I'm going to have women who've done it themselves. So not just women who are like, well, let me tell you what I know you can do, but let me actually share with you some stories and make myself available for those questions. And so in that way, it's like the podcast, in a very different way. It's about saying, how can we connect women who are experts, who attend this conference, who do know about these different subject matters, and who also have questions to connect with each other, right? Because how do I know that you know a lot about real estate if I can't see it on a badge and say, Jen knows a lot about this, or entrepreneurship? And you know what? I'm someone who knows a lot about venture capital, and I want to learn about entrepreneurship. So a lot of it is matchmaking and helping us help each other.
Well, I love that. Getting rich together. I mean, that's going to be the way we do it, right? Is doing it together. I mean, for God's sakes. Um, if you could leave everybody with what your biggest piece of advice of, say, someone's sitting there and kind of scared to take a next step, like what would be the next right first step to becoming, or like, I guess it's not even like, I guess I'll rephrase that. Like, what would be, like, look at the sky for a second. So I ask you the exact right question. Like, what would be, so the women, listening, midlife, entrepreneurs, some work at big companies, some haven't worked for a while, some are facing big changes. What would be like the first thing that they could do to get or start some solid footing on planning their financial future?
Yeah, I think the number one thing is to figure out what actually makes you happy. I know that has nothing to do with money, but it has everything to do with money. It has everything to do with the fact that I haven't had a manicure in over a year, but I go see my hairstylist every 8 to 12 weeks. It's because what makes me happy is spending my money in these certain ways, right? What makes me happy is being able to push ideas I believe in, right? So I might be more interested in investing in a startup because that's what makes me happy. Someone else, happiness to them might be like, you know what? I want to make sure that my investments are in things I believe in, but I don't really want to manage them. And so a big thing is understanding like who you are, what makes you happy, right? And the things that make you happy, you can then start to double click on that. Oh, I actually want to pursue this or think about this, or I want the world to look this way. If you feel the world reflects the life that you want, amazing. But if you feel like the world can look a little different and you feel like you can actually participate in that world that you want is available to you, well, then you better go make a shit ton of money so you can go fucking change it. So what makes you happy? What is the vision of the world you want to see? And then that'll direct everything else. But if it's like oriented towards, hey, I need to save an extra $50 this month, you're going to save the $50 and it's not going to mean anything to you. It just won't mean anything. And so you may not keep it up because there's no energy and meaning associated to the action of the resources that you're looking to create.
Oh, I love that. And yeah, it's defining what it's for you, because it's not going to be what it is for anybody else.
And it can be all of the, like, our visions will never be in conflict. It's not it's not like one of my biggest dreams in this world is that all of us might be able to live self-actualized lives where we can actually be the things we want to be in the world without there being some sort of hierarchy of what's good and what's bad. Entrepreneurship is really glamorized, but we don't glamorize the high school teachers. We don't glamorize the people who are out there mowing our lawns, right? But we glamorize sort of entrepreneurship and these big things, but that's not everyone's calling. So imagine if your calling was actually what you were able to do and be in the world. Well, one way to be able to open up that opportunity for your calling is to be able to have the resources to be able to have that calling, right? And until our world is sort of situated where everyone is recognized for their own innate gifts and everyone gets to pursue those gifts, we have to create the opportunities for ourselves to be able to unleash our gifts.
Oh God, that was so beautifully stated. That was so great, Shama. Oh my God. You just made me, I could talk to you for another hour and I'm gonna have to cut myself off. My God. That was so great. And like, there's going to be so many nuggets and takeaways. I can already see it, just like the self-actualization and closing that gap of the worthiness gap, and setting your own rules, setting your own goals and dreams, and knowing, okay, first, if you take nothing away, knowing that every woman listening is worthy of a wealthy life. And you define what that wealthy life is. It's not what the Joneses have and what you think you should have, and the glamorous whatever. There, it's what's important to you. So I think that's such a powerful way to end. But I have two more questions. Well, one more question, then my little statement for you. Oh my God, I could talk to you forever. So what do you think the best thing is about being in midlife?
Oh my gosh. I think the best thing is knowing that it gets better. So much of my life, I got tingles in my body. It's like so much of my life I was unsure and insecure. And I remember my birthday last year, I looked back and I said, God, I'm so fucking proud of the woman I am. And I get to just lean into that more and more and more and more. And you can never, and this is so important, you can never know less. I can never know less, right? I will only know more. And so that to me has been the biggest unlock. It's like, I know all this stuff now. I get to like lean into my wisdom. I get to lean into the knowingness that I've always had that now I know is true. So the midlife is this amazing opportunity to look back and go, you know what? I was right. And maybe I was right and I didn't follow my intuition and it proved that my gut was right. Maybe I was right and I followed my intuition and look where it led me. I was right, And so really the reflection of our inner knowingness gets to get reconciled with the timeline of our life. And we get to realize just how right we've always been.
Oh, philosopher Shama, I swear to God. When's the book coming out?
I studied economics and philosophy in university, and which is funny because then I ended up this whole career in fashion. But yeah, like the light for me, it's like there's a way in which the world gets to work and operate, and we get a chance, and I get this incredible privilege through this platform and through striking women at this heart of who they are when it comes to their money that gets to be so much bigger than just money, right? It gets to be identity, it gets to be purpose. And gosh, I'm so happy for me.
Happy for you too. And I'm happy that I know you. I'm honored to know you. All right. So everybody claims this at the end because we want to send everybody off with a little rallying cry. So I want you to complete this rallying cry. And it's you're not too fucking old too.
Oh, you're not too fucking old to have the best sex of your goddamn life.
Ooh, let's take it. Like, whoo, just got
I
hot
mean, it's not
there.
what this conversation was about, but like, when it comes to energy, it's like we have energy centers in our bodies, and like that first energy center has to be activated. And it's like the worthiness also comes from owning your sexuality and owning who you are. I mean, yeah, you're not too fucking old to have the best sex of your goddamn life.
Girl. Woo, let's take it. Take notes on that, ladies. Take notes on that. So I'm like, what an awesome way to
I
end.
mean, my
Wow.
inner being just kind of blurted that out. I don't know if I
And you got to let it go where it goes. Like, these shows are not scripted. We have a loose idea about what we talk about, but just so everybody knows, I let conversations go where they need to go. I have an idea, and then, everybody brings the energy, and we let the universe take this conversation where it absolutely needs to go. And that's what needed to come out at the end. So, where can we find you, absorb the podcast, get more about getting rich together and all the things?
Totally. So, the conference will be hosted. It's women.win. Getting Rich Together is wherever your podcast is, Jen. So all the places. So that's, Spotify, Apple. And then, my website, shamabunten.com is where I just kind of host general information about how passionate I am about really where it's going. It's where the newsletter is. I'm so excited to be able to give women opportunities to just be invited to the table. It's like I always tell women, like, just because you look at a deal doesn't mean you have to invest in it. Just because you ask questions doesn't mean you're obligated, right? It's like we need to get comfortable with sort of talking. And so that's all being hosted on my newsletter. But thank you, Jen. This, the opportunity to share the things that I feel the biggest calling to, and to share it with your audience, and to open up the rallying cry around our empowerment and confidence and worthiness around money is so incredible. I'm so grateful.
I'm so grateful for you. This has been a mind-blowing conversation, and we're going to have to keep continuing to converse. And I hope to see you very soon. This has been an absolute gift to have you on the show, Syama.
Well, thank you, darling.